Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time, your time for this. I really appreciate it. I guess to start, can you give us some background? How did you get in cybersecurity? What kind of roles you held in the past?
Sure. Well, glad to be here. Thank you. So I've been in IT for about 25 years, and I'd say 20 years ago is when I first got into cybersecurity as part of my role as just general IT operations, architecture, and day-to-day management of the technology in the company. So I got my CSSP almost 20 years ago, and from there, I kind of started my career in cybersecurity.
Hmm.
And over the years, I got my CISM, my CISA, and just like other training like forensics. So all along, it's been part of the role for me and the duty in just running IT operations. But I'd say really in the last few years, I focused a lot more on cybersecurity, taking on a role as a CISO,
Hmm.
a national mortgage company.
I understand. I understand. And from your kind of vantage point, uh, what kind of advice would you give to someone who is more junior? So someone who is just either getting into the field or kind of they're kind of in a more junior position, or even a student in a university, and they're looking at this growing field of cybersecurity. What kind of advice would you give yourself, your 20-year-old self? What do you tell them to do differently?
Well, I think now there's so many opportunities like before. Cybersecurity is so important. In the past, years ago, you didn't get the funding, you get support from the board or senior management. Today, you have that. So there's endless opportunities. I think it's really important to get your training. And I'm still a big believer in the certs. It's a foundation of your skills. And also just having a general IT background helps.
I understand. I understand. That's awesome. And for someone you would consider a peer, a CISO, maybe in a financial services company, or just kind of a CISO in general, what we're hearing from members is sometimes it could be challenging when you're dealing with either senior management, CEOs, or the board, or even kind of counterparts on the IT side, the CIOs and CTOs, because not always they have the understanding of what cybersecurity professionals are dealing with. They don't fully understand the risks and the potential liability, and often they see CISOs as kind of blockers to progress. And what would be your advice to your peers in terms of some of the best practices in your view on how to manage those relationships, so you get a sense that everyone is kind of rowing in the same direction rather than being antagonistic?
I think the key is early on, you have to build relationships with your peers and with your management and the leaders in the company. It's very important to get their confidence in your ability and your roadmap. That way you get funding and you get traction for resources.
I understand. Makes sense. And kind of, I know that it's the technology in general just changing so much. It seems there are kind of so many different new threat vectors that are emerging, and it's always kind of a tug of war between kind of the red team and the blue team, and everyone is trying to figure out what the future is going to look like. If you had this crystal ball that would tell you what would keep everyone up at night 12 months from now, what would be the kind of top three challenges in your view that will be even more prevalent than they are now, or maybe some emerging issues that you think will be more and more important for CISOs in general and CISOs in financial services in particular?
Well, I think part of the most important today, what I see, is supply chain risk. I mean, we've seen SolarWinds, Casey, and others. And how do you gauge your software that's running your environment? It may not be when you directly support, maybe when your partner supports it. So understand, a third and fourth party risk is key. Really maturing out your vendor management program, to hold your vendors more accountable and understand, what risks do they have to your environment, including PI risk. The second biggest issue that I see is really, especially for companies that have PII, how do you manage that? Right now, I'm going through a pretty large program for data discovery, classification, retention, and deletion. Look at organizations in the past that was not really managed properly. It was not really, considered years ago. Now it's forefront. You have regulations from CCPA, from NYDFS, and other states that actually have teeth today that will go out and fine you for breaches. And it's very important your controls are mature enough for these frameworks.
And do you think that's more kind of along the lines of complying with various regulatory requirements, or is it more just from the perspective to decrease the attack surface and just not owning personally identifiable information if there is no business case for having it in the first place, or maybe both?
Well, if you're looking up for the happy eye, that's wonderful, but a lot of organizations still do. The attack surface is very important because that's really your posture. You look at all the breaches happening. I'm a big believer in monitoring what's your peer posture, because companies that have been breached time and time again, they rank lowest compared to their peers. My strategy is, my goal is I'm going to rank in the top, 10 to 20% of my peers at all times on the perimeter.
So not to be an easy low-hanging fruit for an attacker, essentially.
Well, if you have a strong external posture, then most likely you're going to have a strong internal posture as well.
I see. So that was the second one. What would be the third?
I would say cloud. I mean, a lot of organizations are playing catch up on cloud. Even myself, my developers set up the environments before I got there. So we're working digitally to secure the environment. But, cloud security posture management is a known term and framework that to secure environment. The big unknown is still your identities, your entitlements. So as Gartner coins it, cloud infrastructure entitlement management is a new area. The vendors are still maturing, but you could have tens of thousands of entitlements, which are permissions to any object in your cloud environment. So it's very important to get a handle on that.
I understand. That makes a lot of sense. Well, you have a long and successful career in IT and cybersecurity. I'm sure we have anecdotes of something outrageous or crazy or just funny that happened. Without naming names, what would be a craziest story that you can share? Again, we can protect the innocent, so you have to name names.
Well, I guess maybe I'm lucky. I don't really have a crazy story that stands out. I would say though, what's probably the most for me the interesting is taking my role on at New American, because I built the strategy from scratch to transform security. The company grew enormously over 2020, had to deal with COVID. So it was like a triple threat I had to deal with in a short period of time. And that came together quite well.
You mean like work from home and all those issues that came with COVID, like lack of travel, dealing with unsecured environments in people's homes and getting work done from the kitchen table rather than from the office, right?
Correct. I mean, I saw this coming probably in late 2019 and made sure the supply chain was met properly for computers and other resources. We hired over 2,600 employees in 2020.
Wow.
In the mortgage industry, there was a lot of hiring, but also churn. So you had to manage that. But also I pivoted from an SD-WAN project for all the branches to SASE to move the controls from the branches to the endpoints.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so included a secure web gateway, CASB, as well as DLP, endpoint firewalls, and other controls to make sure that we were secure.
That's excellent. Thanks for sharing this. One of the things that we kind of switching gears a little bit, one of the things that we plan for our membership site right now, it's just kind of a way for members to browse who else is on board and maybe reach out and connect. But eventually, we're thinking of building a vendor directory so that members can rate various vendors, because we feel even if it's 1 or 2 reviews, but it has a name and a face attached to it, members will find it very kind of valuable versus something like Gartner, for example, or G2 Crowd, where you may have a lot more reviews, but you don't really know who those people are and how relevant that would be. And with this in mind, I know you probably deal with a lot of different cybersecurity providers and vendors and whatnot. Kind of in the last 6 months or so, who would you say, whom would you give a shout out to? Who kind of blew your mind and totally over delivered on the expectations?
I would say there's a few. I mean, I like Pantera for pen testing. I run my own. I like Gitpol. That's GYTPL out of Israel. They really help to secure my environment for config management and group policy enforcement, as well as zero-day blocking. CrowdStrike has been wonderful. I got hit with Casey on a couple dozen servers and that blocked it right away. So I still don't understand why ransomware and phishing is a problem, because for myself, I don't see it as a big threat. There's tools out there, there's controls, there's frameworks. It's manageable.
I understand. Awesome. And for Athenia, kind of the main idea is that we feel that if we create a community for senior cybersecurity executives and we provide various kind of benefits, a way to connect, a way to share advice, a way kind of bottom line, create a community that will help individual members to succeed together, both personally and professionally. And we have a lot of different initiatives that we're planning for next year. But from your perspective, what do you think has worked well for you as being part of Athenia? And on the flip side, what do you think what one kind of feature or one experience or one initiative that you think may be missing that we could explore?
Well, I think definitely networking. I'm a big believer in networking with peers, sharing stories, sharing concerns, challenges.
Mm-hmm.
What's missing is, like a lot of groups today, is I think the face-to-face interactions in person.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure if that's the roadmap, but it'd be great to have like regional meetings together.
Mm-hmm. That's it's interesting that you mentioned that, because we on the meeting face to face in smaller groups, one you may have seen in the CISO wire updates that we send out every week, we send we're hosting quarterly CISO mastermind calls, and those are kind of the Zoom half an hour to 45 minutes calls for a dozen or so cybersecurity executives of a certain industry. We had 2 so far, one for financial services and one for healthcare. And if it's something that some of our members found very interesting, because actually you can put a name to a face and you can say, well, my superpower is dealing with ransomware, but I really could use some help in migrating to the cloud. And as you go around the room, you get to meet those people, and you can connect offline and collaborate and troubleshoot. And a lot of people that a lot of members kind of found it useful. And it's only quarterly. It's only about half an hour to 45 minutes, so it's not a big time commitment. That's one. But the other, face-to-face, we're just gauging comfort level of our members to meet, again, probably a dozen or so people for dinners and kind of various cities. And it's definitely something that we feel a lot of people find value, as you mentioned, regional events. So that's where we'll start. We just want, again, not large scale and more, I guess, casual, a way for people to meet each other. We'll definitely start it in Q1 next year, and we'll see how it goes.
Great, looking forward to it.
Excellent. Well, we're almost coming up on time. Is there anything that you want to add, either about Athenia or about something you wish we had, or anything you want to share with our members?
I just want to say thank you for having me be a member of Athenia. Thank you for having the opportunity for us to join. And for any other members, feel free to reach out to me.
Excellent. So let me just stop.